this week we're reviewing the third episode in the X-Files revival called Mulder and Scully Meet the Worm Monster, and this is the one. This is the one that I've been waiting for. This is, I guess the best way to say it is, even if the next 3 episodes are total dog shit, and no matter what I think about the first 2 episodes, it was worth X-Files coming back just for this one. I enjoyed it that much.
I think the most important question that everybody's wanting to know right now is it pronounced Weremonster or Weremonster?
I don't know, potato. Depends on who you are or where you're from, I guess.
I'm going to go with where.
Okay. I do were.
I do where.
Fair enough.
You also do men.
Not fair.
Fair enough.
Okay, Mulder and Scully Meet the Worm Monster was written and directed by a guy named Darren Morgan. And
Darren Morgan.
One of the things that I'm loving about this revival is, Fluke Man. But instead of infusing new blood into the X-Files franchise, they're going back and they're using all of their best creators. It's like a who's who, a best of X-Files creative. We had Chris Carter. We had Wong. This week, Darren Morgan. And next week is Darren's brother, Glenn Morgan.
The Morgan brothers.
Yes.
JP part of that?
Yeah. He wouldn't be a brother. He's long dead, right?
He's white, I think.
Darren Morgan has had several classic X-Files episodes under his belt. And he really specializes in the super weird ones. He did Humbug with the town of Carnies. And then he did Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose and Jose Chung from Outer Space. His were the episodes where you had Richard Belzer guest starring as John Munch from Law and Order, like reprising his character. Those were the episodes where the Men in Black were played by Alex Trebek and Jesse the Body Ventura.
Oh, that's right.
Just...
Hey, Jesse.
But they really stood out as being weird, different episodes. And that's exactly what he brought. It's probably his best episode ever.
And he does have a quirky sense of humor, which was obvious in this episode.
Yes. He always does. He always brings that quirk. This time it worked best, probably because of the performers. Rhys Darby as the monster. I'll say right now that if he wasn't so strong in this, and I'm partial to the guy. Every time I see him in something, he's the funniest thing in it.
Sure. But
he was just so bumbling and charming that I loved him in this. If they had cast somebody without that comic charisma, it might not have worked out so well, but the casting was just dead on, and it was the funniest X-Files episode of all time.
It's a big risk to have that character because he has to have intelligence because his humor is dry and intelligent. But again, he's been this lizard man his whole life, so he has to be ignorant to human activities.
Right.
So he has to pull off dumb and intelligent at the same time, and very few people can do that.
And he did. He was absolutely bewildered by everything. Like his compulsion to have a job and to lie about his sex life. He does it. He's like, why the hell am I doing this? I don't know. I laughed a lot.
The concept of the story, the writing is great because it borderlines on, man is the monster and human nature is such a horrible thing. But it never gets preachy. There's no politics to it. It's just funny.
Yeah, they're playing with... And this is like a clever writer's thing, which usually doesn't work out because, how's that working out for you? Being clever. It just...
Yeah. Are you asking me personally? Because I'm doing pretty well.
No, it's a Fight Club quote.
Oh, okay.
But Morgan, with this, he inverted everything about, the werewolf myth. He flipped it on its head. At the same time, he did the same thing with the Mulder-Scully dynamic, which I loved. Mulder was like giving up on being Mulder.
Sure.
I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
And Scully is like, she's like really speaking for the audience, like rooting them on, like, no, this isn't the Mulder I want. I want you to be into all this crazy shit.
Sure, Mulder was doing the old take your ball and go home activity, when your feelings are hurt and you just don't care anymore, and he's just pouty and just still a bitch. It was like, we've had a lot of bitchy Mulder in this series.
Sure, yeah.
But it made it better towards that was the big payoff for me, was the end of it, where,
Seems like we got him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the sense of the saying for the series, this is the true revival of the show. I honestly think the first 2 episodes were not great. I was disappointed in both of them. I didn't love either of them. I think this one, it might be my all-time favorite episode.
Yeah. I liked the second episode. I wasn't impressed by the first one either. I liked the second episode a little more than you did, but this is a classic.
We had mentioned during the first 2 episodes, or I had mentioned the first 2 episodes, I didn't get any kind of like a feeling that I felt the need to talk about either episode. I just didn't really, it didn't affect me. The second episode was quality, I just didn't love it. This episode, there's probably about 10 different spots where I felt the need to text somebody or explain to my girlfriend who does not care about the show how great this is, especially with all the little Easter eggs they had in this episode.
So many Easter eggs.
I marked out for at least 4 of them. The Kim Manners memorial, who's a producer and director of X-Files, just so well done.
There was also a tombstone for Jack Hardy, who played Deep Throat in the first season.
That's disgusting.
Well, that's, take that up with Chris Carter. I was never a fan of calling any character Deep Throat, despite the political connections, but he went in that route. But that's why the follow-up to Deep Throat was named Mr. X. It's
also sounds dirty.
Yeah, a lot less dirty than Deep Throat, though.
Speaking of dirty and Deep Throat, how about that Scully scene?
Yeah, that was funny.
A little nerd porn for you.
A little bit. And
probably the sexiest thing in that area or genre since Princess Leia was a sex slave. She's got some nice tits.
No, she's...
Should we edit that out? Was that bad?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
While we're on the subject, Netflix has a British miniseries
about nice tits
called The Fall, starring Gillian Anderson, who is sexually active throughout the series and has some sexy scenes in it.
Any full frontal?
No, she's too classy.
No one cares then.
Yeah. I disagree. No. She's also really good in it, in addition to looking good, but that's true of this episode as well. She was the straight man, for so to speak, comedically, but she was perfect. She sort of voiced the audience, and I loved it.
How funny is it that the Rhys Darby character references junk shots on pictures and his fantasy remembrance of his interaction with Scully?
Right.
Being that he's only been human for a couple of days, he knows about junk shots. That's classic.
So, we were talking about Easter eggs.
Well, you interrupted me. You tried to out-nerd me.
Yeah. Oh, well, go ahead then.
Sure, let me check. I actually took notes for this one.
Nice.
Yeah. That's how much I like the episode. Let's see. 4-1 cleaner, ground beef, milk, tampons, lettuce. Nope, that ain't the right one. Sorry. Here we go. And I'm not going to say this name right, but the Kumar-looking gentleman, Kumail Nanjiani or whatever.
Yeah.
Notorious, huge X-File fan. Getting a spot in this episode was awesome. Let's see, what else we have? The Scully scene where she says, "I'm immortal." If you're an X-Files fan, there's tons of speculation about this whole theory that she is, in fact, immortal, which goes back to an episode called Tithanus, which was one of my favorite episodes, also written by Vince Gilligan. So
interesting.
That was a nice
and that was actually, the immortal thing was addressed in one of the other Darren Morgan episodes a few years.
Yeah, he wrote the expounded theory on that episode about how she is possibly immortal.
Yeah, so and I love touching on that.
Chris Carter on the record has actually said that Scully is immortal.
Yeah. Well,
so
yeah, she's got the alien DNA in her now, so why not? They also Tyler Labine was in the beginning.
Tyler Labine.
Which I thought was a fun cameo, but I won't pretend like I knew this. But when I looked it up, it turns out him and that girl, the actress's name is Nicole Parker, they're just billed as like, Stoner 1 and 2.
Huff and Paint.
They both, as a couple, were in 2 previous X-Files episodes as stoners in the woods.
That's awesome.
It was cool to see Tyler Labine, but it also ended up being like this great, like, quiet reference to 2 earlier episodes.
Yeah, I did not know that. Labine's got a lot of work in this genre, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, he's if you don't know, he's in Tucker and Dale versus Evil, one of my all-time favorite horror comedies.
He's also got a show on Hulu called Deadbeat, which kind of deals with paranormal and shit like that.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet. I've heard good things about it though.
And I do believe, was he on Reaper as well?
Yes, he was on Reaper.
So yeah, and he's a big X-Files fan as well. So that was pretty cool.
Kitty, what did you think about the episode, Kitty?
Our podcast mascot is here, Catrick Bateman, the kitty.
All right, so I hear we had some feedback from one of our viewers about this episode. We're going to wrap it up and get into like our final thoughts and our final review of the episode.
That's right. Let me pull it up here. One of our supporters, Brandon, who's at TickleMeErmel on Twitter, gave his contribution for his review, and we welcome anybody who wants to send us their own thoughts, reviews, or talk about how shitty Nate is. Feel free to message us. I'm at CleverLang on Twitter.
I'm at NateFlix.
So feel free to send us your thoughts, and this is...
or just comment on this video. I'm going to respond. I always respond to all the comments.
Yeah. Brandon gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Said it felt like a Twilight Zone episode, and that Rhys Darby was fantastic, and Scully was sexy as well, which I totally agree. Good call, Brandon.
Can't argue with that. And that makes me think. He compared it to Twilight Zone. Last week, the Founders Mutation episode, we compared to Fringe. It felt very fringy. This episode felt entirely X-Files. It didn't feel like this was an hour of television only X-Files could have pulled off. And that's something else that really weighs in its favor.
This is weird, but for some reason, the FBI portion of the show is heavy with the conspiracy portion of the show, and I felt both the conspiracy and the FBI, outside of 2 agents, was completely absent from this episode.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Definitely. This probably shoots to the top of my list of, if I'm going to introduce somebody to the X-Files, of course I'm going to tell them to start with the pilot, but you can watch this episode with, it tells you everything you need to know. Maybe you don't get some of the jokes, but it's a funny, clever episode, like, outside of any context of the show. Like a true Monster of the Week episode.
And that's another thing that Morgan did that was very clever, was they overused the term monster for this episode, because when he wrote this for the revival, he realized that it was a tired genre. The Monster of the Week dubbing was from the fans, and it's been tired, so he wanted to do a unique take on it, and I think he succeeded. He
absolutely did. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this episode?
On a scale, when it's a 10, to me would be unattainable, so I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah, for now, I'm going to give it a 9 as well, and I don't mind giving a 10 out of 10 for an episode that I feel can't get any better, but I've only watched it once, and I can't give a perfect score to an episode because it has to hold up. First time through, I was completely blown away. I laughed so much, but I need to watch it again and see if it's just as funny the second time.
The only reason I'm not giving it a 10, because it might be, now, again, my memory is not that great right now. I haven't watched the other episodes recently, but I think it might be my favorite episode of all time. The reason it's not a 10 is because it didn't have any conspiracy angle in it. And that's not necessarily a slight against the episode, but it's confusing to me. It's only 6 episodes, so I'm wondering, is this a 6-episode season, or is this a commercial for a renewing of the next season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the way the show has always been. Their Monster of the Week, they would oftentimes not have any conspiracy stuff. And I guess it didn't bother me because the conspiracy stuff this season hasn't been that strong. I feel if they would have included any of it, probably just would have weighed this episode down.
It doesn't bother me in the quality of the episode. It bothers me in the quality of the season and the direction. Mm. And bother's not a good word. It's intriguing. I'm not sure where it's going 100%. So like you said, rewatching this episode after I see where the season goes or the 6-episode portion of this goes, then I might raise it up to a 10.
Well, and that's something that in modern day, like ongoing serial storytelling in TV shows, sometimes you have to finish watching the season and then review it in context. There have been episodes of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and several other shows where after the season ended, maybe I liked a particular episode more or less because, I get it now. Now it was worth the build. Or, for that payoff, you spent too much time on the subplot, But yeah, for now, an easy 9 out of 10. And I'll call it must-see. Even if you're not an X-Files fan, you should definitely watch this. It might make you one.
I feel like we need to talk about a couple things that we haven't touched on yet. One is Mulder's ringtone.
Yeah.
Which is awesomely the theme song to X-Files. The transgender violence.
Yes.
That was I don't know, is that a good thing or was that mean towards transgender people?
You know what? I've actually read several reviews that either attack it or praise it, so I guess it depends on how charged up you are about the issue. How I took it is, early on.
Did you take it like a man?
Mulder talks to that tranny hooker, who's makes jokes about smoking crack, and then later on they discuss the procedure with the lizard man.
Yeah, it's like, dude, they think I'm on crack. Well, are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
It was. I laughed out loud at that. But in neither case, they weren't making fun of transgendered people. It wasn't at their expense. It was. I thought it was legit funny, and I could see sensitive people being outraged about it. I don't see any problem with it, though.
I think as a collective, we have a message for sensitive people. Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. They were good jokes.
Yeah. What about the dialogue that Reese Darby had about that, where he's basically it's understandable. Changing from a monster to a human, okay. From a human to a monster, okay. From a woman to a man, he questioned that as a possibility. Mm-hmm. When decided, and then they go to, well, you have to take your genitals off. Then he was like, "There's no way you can consider that."
Yeah, exactly.
So I just found that funny for that character.
That's a step too far, isn't it?
So that might be a slight against transgender, and said that he couldn't understand or fathom how that's even a possibility. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, well, and not to get too deep on it, but he's a lizard who's just like. I just realized that everything dies. I never knew that until just now.
Yeah.
So, getting your dick cut off, that's fine if that's your choice, but that's a human thing. That doesn't, happen in the animal kingdom.
No.
That's just something that we do because,
Just another monster behavior of humans.
And another quick shout-out Easter egg was the outfit that Reese Darby wears for most of the episode is Chris Carter credits an old show called Kolchak the Night Stalker as being the inspiration for the X-Files. This was the exact outfit that Kolchak wore in every single episode of the Night Stalker. Sort of that ridiculous looking hat and the blue blazer and and the necktie.
Owen Hart?
So yes, he was wearing Owen Hart.
I wish you would fall from the rafters.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
Do you have any other shitty references to cram in there?
I can't really top that one. Jesus Christ. I like the dynamic between Mulder and Scully, how Mulder was Scully allowed Mulder to go on his own and into his fantasy world again.
Yeah.
And Scully just held shit down. Like, there's 2 different times where she handles the situation, and Mulder comments on it, like, what about backup? You don't wait? And she's like, nah, I got this. No need. Also, I liked how they shit on different aspects of these shows. First of all, Mulder shits on being profiling the killer.
Right.
He's like, I'd stop that shit way before I gave up monsters, so fuck that. Then Scully shits on serial killers.
Yeah.
Now, there's that popular show on Netflix right now. You know, what is it, How to Make a Murderer or something?
Yes.
So it's topical, and he's like, well, it started when I killed little animals when I was killed animals when I was a kid. She's like, save it for whoever.
Yeah, save it for the jury or something.
I had a whole speech prepared, and Scully's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, I just thought that was pretty funny. And I'm pretty sure that's a hit at the serial killers and the whole manifestos and all that kind of shit.
Well, you know, and it's a hit on things that they've done a bunch of times on the X-Files already. This is an episode that knows everything that the X-Files has done and sort of plays off of that and is just so fresh, you know, taking it in such a new direction.
I have these are just kind of notes that I put down as I watched this show. Einhorn is Finkel type monster situation. You know, Einhorn is Finkel, Finkel is Einhorn.
Right.
I thought that was funny. Cell phone spoofing I liked. Cannibalism's always a good thing. Transgender violence I like. Nerd porn. A Rob Zombie-esque Purgatory Motel. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, with the weird looking stuffed animal heads on the wall.
That could have been a whole episode right there with the guy
Definitely.
drinking, rubbing alcohol as he tried to clear his eyes out. Like he couldn't believe what he saw.
Yeah, I mean, and a total throwaway character, but still sort of memorable and creepy.
Yeah, so if they ever come back, you know, in a motel scene, he could be there again. That'd be pretty cool. Of course, Tyler Bean, who I marked out for. The dog being named Dagu.
Mm-hmm.
The dumbest name ever. For some reason, I love that name.
Well, there's a nerd reference for it.
Of course there is. Let's hear it.
Her last dog that got eaten by a lake monster was named Queequeg. She used to have a dog for several episodes, and then it got eaten. And that was a reference to the book Moby Dick. Okay. And Dagu is like some other character from the book Moby Dick.
Sidebar to that, just before the attack on Scully at the end by the animal protector guy, she mentions how dogs protect their owners, you know, in times of danger, and they're chasing Rhys Darby. Dagu, being Rhys Darby's dog, bites Scully.
I didn't even pick up on that.
And this was before they had figured out everything 100%. So I thought that was kind of a cool...
Yeah.
And then at the end, of course, she talks about her fondness of a dog, and she takes Dagu home with her.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
A happy ending for Dagu. I love that. Good for him. He earned it.
Yeah, I hope we see more Dagu in future episodes.
And then I also like the when Mulder was sulking, and he's throwing the pencils through the poster instead of into the ceiling.
Right.
That was a nice little
and
switch
then
there.
Scully said that it was her poster. Like, she had brought in the new I Want to Believe poster for The Office.
And then, of course, the end line, which gave me a little goosebumps when he tells Rhys Darby, I want to believe.
Yeah.
And then Darby transforms in front of him, and then it's just like Mulder's back.
Yeah.
Just great ending to a great episode.
And, I mean, and such a nice touch to take, like, the most overused line from the entire series and make it important.
Yeah, you know, it didn't seem hacky at all.
No, you wanted to hear it. Yes. It was satisfying.
Okay, favorite part, if you can narrow down one scene or part of the show, what is your favorite part of this episode? And I know this episode's particularly difficult to do that with. Mine sticks out fucking easily. My favorite scene of the episode would be the Fox Mulder Speedo scene. Now that's how I like my Fox.
Sexy Fox.
Yeah, just packing it in there. Good for him, by the way.
Yeah, I guess as rough as he looked in that first episode, I guess that was just big budget effects. Either that or he's been hitting the shit out of the gym recently.
Yeah, I mean what they're spending on the show isn't the only big budget going on there.
Nice. Other than, I mean, we sort of referenced a couple of my favorite lines.
Sure.
The crack smoking line and talking about the sex change operation, which was quite funny. I think when he said when Mulder and Scully were sort of bickering about Mulder saying that he could shoot blood out of his eyes, and she's like, no.
Yeah.
But then later, when Rhys Darby's like, well, I barely even had time to shoot blood out of my eyes, did I?
So matter-of-factly.
Yeah, and just that callback, I lost it.
I would like to amend my obviously gay reference to the Speedo scene. My favorite scene is the entire length of the leading interrogation that Mulder does, where he keeps anticipating an answer that's going to be revealing of him being the monster or the killer. And it's always a misdirection and something innocent. But like he said, I got my kill. But he's referring to going to a fast food place.
Right. Because he's only ever eaten insects before.
Yeah, and his references are so innocent and misleading that that whole exchange to me was classic.
And that's the thing. That was like a huge 10-minute chunk of the episode, and it was perfect. It was so funny.
All right, well, I'm done gushing over this episode. 9 out of 10.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 from both of us. And next week's episode, from what I hear, is going to be the exact opposite. The other Morgan brother is doing it. It is going to be almost devoid of humor, and it's supposed to be pretty goddamn intense.
Okay.
Which is good. They shouldn't actually try and be funny for the rest of this season, because they're not going to be able to top this.
No. One and done. I love it.
Yes. And part of what makes the X-Files so great. We'll be back in 1 week with the review of the episode entitled Home Again.
Yes, and we'll have this review on YouTube, so feel free to leave comments. And again, you can get at us on Twitter. I'm at CleverLang. Nate's at NateFlix.
All right. Next week.
All right. Go fuck your mothers.